get us kicked off about half an hour, although this is the final session, so you probably can go a little bit over if anyone's still interested. But I'm excited for this particular session. CincyTech doesn't only invest in startups, which we've already heard a bit from this morning, Curone, Blue Water, Enable, Hive, and Clarigen, all companies that we've invested in. But we're also investing in our student and university engagement a lot. So we're doing things like expanding project and internship opportunities with not just ourselves at CincyTech, but also our portfolio companies. We're getting into the classroom to increase student exposure to startups and also supporting entrepreneurship programs. And so this has been super important for us, and we're already sort of seeing that in our numbers, right? So before 2019, we averaged about 2 to 3 summer interns at CincyTech. This year alone, we have worked on paid projects or internship work with over 30 students, and even more in the classroom. Students like these are what I talk about in the classroom. Miami University in particular has been an outstanding partner with us, and Artie Kuhn, a professor at Miami's. It was IMS, now it's Emerging Technology Business and Design Program.
Holy smokes, good job, Carl.
ETBD, and he's been a partner with us as well. In one of his classes, he'll talk a bit more of that, his students do a dive deep into designing apps to encourage an expansive view of health. So they research the current state of health apps, conduct ethnographic research into the needs of users, and then they go ahead and actually design iPhone apps that leverage gamification to help students improve their habits. So I'm gonna hand it over to Artie and to his students. I'm really looking forward to this. And I will keep tabs on questions stuff in the chat as you go through and help out.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Carl. Hi, everybody. It's a little disconcerting that I don't see any of you. I only see my students. Hi, guys. How are all of you? It's good to see you in the Brady Bunch squares. Okay. So I'm going to do my best here to share my screen and walk through presentation. Yell at me if you can't see anything. Like Carl said, our students designed a series of health apps. Let me get into that a little bit, provide some context as to explaining how and why we did that. So like Carl said, I'm Artie. My background is in product design and in toys and things like that, and education. So my background is not at all in health. But I think that we have some interesting insights in this class to be relevant to folks that are working on health-related apps. After working in industry for a little over a decade, I switched to Miami. And like Carl said, we're in the newly renamed Department of Emerging Technology in Business and Design. And to give you a little bit of context as to what that is, we're a pretty unique program. We don't fit into any kind of one disciplinary silo. We exist kind of across multiple domains, specifically the domains of design, business, and technology. It's in the name. We are what we say on the tin. And this class is really is in the sweet spot of that. So this class that we taught for a handful of years now is kind of an intermediate design class. We touch on technology, we touch on business. And when we say business, we mean mostly strategy and things like that. And in our department, one of our kind of mantras is that unitaskers suck. So our students are this really diverse and eclectic group of students that are really good at a lot of different things. And so once I get into introducing these guys, you'll see that these are double majors and multiple minors and things like that. Folks that are engaged not just in how do I make something look nice or how do I implement this technology, but really interested in the intersection of all of those things and thinking through what they look like. Our department, before it was renamed, was Interactive Media Studies, was founded in the mid-90s and is one of the primary and was one of the original kind of academic organizations heading into this kind of stuff. It really formed out of a handful of professors at Miami that were like, hey, maybe this web and internet thing might stick around. And so it might become something. And so kind of grew up out of that brain trust. We now are the largest program in our college. We have just short of about 1,000 students involved in our program. And students go on to do all kinds of things. So everything from video games to augmented reality to virtual reality to entertainment design, like projection into physical space of imagery for things like concerts and things like that, to social media and marketing, digital marketing, user experience design, programming, the whole gamut is kind of where our students end up. And we are really good at it. So we have a pretty high job placement rate, or actually very high job placement rate. And We've been partnered with folks like Carl for a number of years. This relationship has been fantastic. We've been able to get more folks into the classroom. It's another one of the things that our department tries to do is get really tight industry connections and get folks into the classroom, introducing what they're working on and exposing our students to new ideas. We like to say that all of our classes do two things: water ski over the surface of the lake and then scuba dive down deep. And so you'll see in this, and hopefully you'll see in this project, that students surveyed a large amount of space inside of the health zone, but they only went about an inch deep. And then once they found a spot that they thought was interesting, after they'd had us kind of water skied over the surface, they're able to dive down into one specific area and really try to understand it. When we're talking about designing a better health app, I think it's worth noting something that I'm sure all of you that are working in this space know way better than any of us, which is that health is a really gnarly, wicked problem. It's really twisted. There's lots of knots. When we talk about health, we mean more than just our physical bodies. We mean, our mental state, our relational state, our ability to learn intellectually. All those things are tied into health, and it's a really gnarly problem. And so we certainly don't claim to be the experts in that. I have a background in toy design, for crying out loud. And these students are students. But I think that their approach was really interesting, and they have a lot of things that I think would be useful both in the health sector and just some insights that would be useful elsewhere. Again, before to get to that, I do want to point out that one of the things that we talk about in this class, and I really do believe, is that we often think of innovation as an invention, and we confuse invention and innovation to our peril. But really, invention is embedded inside of innovation. And by that, I mean, it's one thing to invent a new health technology. It's another to figure out the business model and the market and trying to bring these things to market and that kind of thing. And oftentimes when you study invention and innovation, you see that they're actually sometimes their overlap is not very large. So for instance, companies like Netflix, Google, and Apple's iPhone, there's not a lot of new invention in these things. Take Netflix, for instance. There's, people have been streaming video for years before Netflix came along. Their innovation was really a business model issue. And when thinking about health, we often just get caught up, at least our students do, get caught up in thinking of new ways of solving health problems from an invention standpoint. But really, a lot of those problems have been solved, and it's just a matter of figuring out how do we increase engagement in those things, how do we make sure that people actually do the things we know are good for them, all of that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what our students mostly focused on in this class. I'm going to fly through these slides because I want to get to the good stuff, and that is the student work. So how they went about doing this is they put on some design thinking lenses and really engage in ethnographic research and mind melding with the user's needs. They did a lot of dog fooding. And so what they did at the first half of the semester before they even started this project is they tried out a whole range of health apps. They were all kind of given like free rein, like, hey, go pick something that you think sounds interesting in your app store and try it out for a week, and then try another thing out for a week and another thing out for a week. They also talked to potential users and tried to wrap their minds around what's the problems here, what's the problem that really needs to be solved, not just what do we think it needs to be. Really try to get down below the surface. And related to that, they came up with really interesting kind of observations, things that we didn't expect. And like I mentioned, a lot of these were not really tied to anything new needs to be invented. A lot of the things that they came up with already existed in the marketplace. Which was that users just didn't engage in it properly. So things like for mental health, we know that journaling really helps. Well, not many people do that. They get kind of lost. What does that actually mean? Or physical health, we know that getting out and moving is really important, but people don't really know where to start. And all those kinds of things kind of came out of the empathy building stages of ethnographic research. So let me introduce you to these guys. This is in no particular order. Actually, the order is the order that they responded to my email. And so we're on the call today. We have Sydney. Sydney is graduating this December, which makes all of us have a single tear fall from our eyes. She's interactive media studies double major with fashion, and she's a digital marketing minor. Jules is also graduating in December, and she's also double major between us and media and culture. Erin is a junior, She's a double major in entrepreneurship over in the Farmer School of Business. Jack is interactive media studies major and is graduating at the end of this academic year. Liam is a junior Liam's in on the year where they flipped over the name of our major. So he's an emerging technology and business and design major with computer science minor. And Jake also is a interactive media studies major, and also has a minor in computer science as well as digital innovation. And Jake is graduating in this December as well and has recently accepted a new position as an iOS developer at Atomic Robot up in Mason. We're really pretty pumped about that. So I want to flip it over to these guys. Hey, gang, what were some of, after you engaged in that ethnographic research stage, what were some of those insights that kind of emerged out of that process that you think would be relevant for some of the folks on this call? Go, Jack. You are on mute, which is a common thing in my world. I'm sure all of you guys are experiencing that too. All right, Jack, go for it.
So when it comes to mental health and being productive and trying to get yourself out there, a lot of times having notification features are a plus because it reminds you to go out and get there. Even if you're going to ignore them every time, eventually you'll see it and you'll want to engage. So to really push yourself and to have applications push you further is a really big step.
Yeah. So like one of the things that we looked at was the habit formation process and how, you need to engage in users in a way that will get them back into using your tool, even after they've stopped using it. Does anybody have any other observations that came out of the habit formation process?
Be somewhat similar. I designed an app to help people reduce screen time on their phones. And a lot of current screen time apps really focus on giving you a limit in terms of time that you're allowed to spend on your phone. But I kind of wanted to take a different take on that because humans are really motivated by increasing numbers. So I thought about increasing the time that you spend off your phone as a goal versus decreasing the time that you spend on was a really powerful way to kind of shape how that habit is controlled.
Yeah, I think that what I thought was cool about Jake's solution was that kind of taking your normal expectation and flipping it. And so instead of shaming you for using your phone too much, kind of provided opportunity for other options of the things you can do. Aaron had another interesting flip. Aaron, you want to talk about some of the observations that you had inside of your app?
Yes, definitely. So can everyone hear me? Okay, great. I just want to make sure. So I designed a period tracking app for women. And one thing that I found through a lot of my research of using period tracking apps was a lot of them were very clunky, slow, not really fun to use. So I think one thing I really wanted to emphasize was just the overall appearance of it and having it be something that I wanted to use. Because as women, having our periods isn't something necessarily that we look forward to. So at least if I could make the app fun and engaging, it could really create that habit formation. And another thing that I found was just layout of the data is super crucial and just making it super digestible. I mean, everyone's so busy. No one wants to spend a lot of time on an app. So just laying out the data in a way that's easy to understand at a single glance was something that I really tried to emphasize in the design of mine as well.
Yeah. Hey, Sydney, you struggled with a lot of complex data and displaying it in an interesting way, just like Aaron did. Can you kind of give a high-level overview of that before we actually look at the apps and just kind of talk about some things that you came up with there?
Yeah, so I designed an app for type 1 diabetes. So to see all the weekly averages and daily and monthly averages can be really overwhelming. And right now it's on multiple different apps. So I tried to make sure that it just was the essential data for the user, that it wasn't anything that they didn't really need. So I really just cut down and make sure like they could only see their weekly and daily, and it was in like a way that was very easy for them to read the graphs and not something super complicated that a doctor would need to read.
Yeah. That also is related to Jules. It's funny how we're just kind of ping-ponging between everybody. It's almost like I planned this. For Jules worked on a nutrition app, and just displaying the information wasn't what was needed there. It was beyond that and trying to help people make good choices so they didn't encourage bad choices. Jules, can you kind of talk through some of the things that you worked through there?
Yeah. One thing that I really focused on with this design is creating a sense of routine and consistency for people, especially trying to maintain or actually gain weight. I received a lot of insight from the people around me that are struggling with eating disorders. And to get into that habit participation, I tried to create an app where they could actually create a healthy routine that they could stick to.
And so what were some things that you specifically did in that process, Jules?
I did some external research. I interviewed some people just because I wanted to get out of my own bias. I think we are all clouded by our own judgments, opinions, and biases. And I think research is a crucial step into creating any idea.
Yeah. You know, that kind of ties into Liam. I thought some folks that Liam talked to were, was kind of an interesting take. He talked directly to some experts and subject matter experts and doctors and psychiatrists and folks like that. Liam, you want to kind of share some of your kind of process and some of the insights that came out of that?
Yeah, I kind of went a little slightly different direction from the habit formation, and it was more about transforming a lot of the practices in terms of like psychiatrists, pediatricians, and like managing your family's doctor and medical records was very segregated across practices. So if you go to one, they'd make you do a bunch of new tests and stuff, and just because they forgot the paperwork. And so what I talked to with my psychiatrist, he said, there's no place to host all your medical records for all your doctors across a large platform. And so I basically thought of like a LinkedIn for having all your medical records in one place. And I found with like my chart and a lot of current solutions is they just replace the paperwork, but in a digital form. And it's still very hard to visualize your whole family network. And so I just try to make a very visual, transparent network where you can see your whole family along with all their doctors.
And so bringing in that communal component, is that what you're kind of emphasizing there, Liam?
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. Well, that was kind of their process on the ethnographic research side. Once they do that, they kind of ideate in teams and come up with some ideas and that kind of stuff. Then they do a lot of pencil-based sketching, did a lot of bringing in external folks to take a look at that, get feedback. So like Carl had brought some folks in, which was awesome. We love our CincyTech friends. And get a lot of feedback into that cycle and that kind of stuff. And then they started actually building mock-ups and things like that. You know, most of our ETBD courses end in development, actually programming these things out. So like, you know, Jake's and would you say you are an iOS developer or soon to be iOS developer, Jake? How would you classify, how do you self-identify in that context?
I'd say I am at this point.
There we go. Okay, Jake is a iOS developer, and so like for instance, Jake has a diabetes app on the App Store and folks and stuff like that, and there's some really great stuff happening. In this class, however, the deliverable was really simple, just the design. And so we're gonna take a look at some of those things. So since I just talked to Jake, I'm gonna go ahead and share Jake's. Jake, for everybody, I'm gonna be the one in the driver's seat on this, so we don't gotta ping pong around and look at everybody's screen and have that awkward moment when you can read somebody's text that's not appropriate or whatever. Instead, I'll just be in the driver's seat. So Jake, I have yours here. Can you kind of walk us through it really quick?
I don't think you're screen sharing. Oh, there you go.
What? Now I am. All right, look at that. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so
Can
a
you
quick
see this?
walkthrough. Designed an app called Minute, and the main functionality was to encourage you to maybe purchase these little NFC tags with specific goals on them and then connect them to the app. So with this app, you would say you, for example, want to have more family time where you're not on your phone. You could have one of these family time NFC stickers sitting on your kitchen table, and whenever you place your phone over that sticker, the phone would start tracking that as downtime where you're not using your phone. And from that perspective, that plays back into how we can encourage people to really increase the time that their phone is down instead of limiting them on the amount of time that they have it up. So the phone would track the amount of time spent on these stickers and then provide some really like nice insights, as you can see on the left, for when their phone is down, how they're completing their goals, and how they can set new goals.
And Jake, when you showed this around to some folks and got feedback, what were some of the things that you heard?
One of the main things was in a lot of the data display. That calendar view, it was really hard to showcase which days people are doing really well in meeting their goals and which days they aren't. So we really focused on layering that data with the different colors of the shade of blue. And then some positive feedback was that people really liked the way in which we were encouraging them to actually sit their phone down on something. It seemed to really help with the action of putting the phone down and focusing on other things.
So like the physical action help with compliance. Is that what you mean? Like just
Right, yeah.
Wasn't just a notification that said, hey, put this thing away. It was a physical act of doing it that really helped.
Right.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. I want to look at another one that has some interesting data displays. So we're going to switch over to Erin. Erin, you're on the spot. Okay.
Yes.
Can you remind everybody what your app was?
Yes. So I created an app called Bloom. It's a period tracking app for women where they can go in and track when their cycle is happening. And essentially, it utilizes AI and obviously gets smarter over time in terms of telling the woman when her period is coming, when she's PMSing, and when she's fertile. I don't know if there's additional. Yes, so here is kind of the cycle at a glance page. They can go in and hit the plus button and track, their amount of flow, other physical and emotional nuances. One thing that I found through my research was a lot of period tracking apps were really just focused on kind of the physical state of a woman's body as opposed to her emotional and relational aspects as well. So if you go to the next one, I tied in some physical and mood tabs, which again kind of get smarter over time in terms of, when you're PMSing, when you're experiencing, sadness versus anger, things like that. And then finally, I incorporated a feature called the kind of profile link or partner link, where you can notify either your partner, your husband, wife, whoever, if you're PMSing, you're on your period, you're fertile, etc. They'll receive a text. And so it kind of ties in the relational aspect as well.
Yeah, can you kind of talk about why you included that relational aspect? I think that's something that normally one would not really think about. But
Yeah.
what I thought was cool about your insight was kind of why you built that in. So kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's really important that if you're in a relationship or with someone, they're aware of kind of those nuances, because I think, like I said, through a lot of my research, period tracking apps were very focused on the physical aspects. They weren't necessarily focused on, other relational and mental aspects. And so I think those are intertwined into a woman's health, in my opinion. And so I think it's important that, if your partner can be aware of such things, if you're having different mood swings, or also if you're trying to prevent pregnancy, that's really important because it tells when you're fertile, when you're on your period, things like that. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Related to that is Liam's. Liam's had mentioned earlier that, there's a lot of tools out there like Epic that allow you to see your stuff online, but they're kind of interconnected relational aspects are kind of where those things kind of fall apart, where the batons get dropped. And so, Liam, you want to walk us through your solution?
Yep.
Great. Go for it.
So I really wanted to focus on the visualization of the network and kind of showing you your whole family and how they're connected to their doctors and make it very transparent. And so the hard thing was keeping it consistent with how I designed it with kind of this network theme. And so first you see your whole family, and then I wanted to make it so like as soon as you click on your family, it kind of zooms out to their network and you get to see their doctors. So on the third screen, you see their little bubble of doctors here. And when you click on that, it then pops up all the medical records that are related to that doctor, and you get to control who sees which medical record, and you can instantly pop up all your files and scroll through them. And the hard thing here was kind of prioritizing, not showing too much, but at the same time using a lot of progressive disclosure to get to different points in the app without shoving a lot in your face like the current solutions do.
What were some of the things what was some feedback that you heard on that?
On the
On the progressive disclosure by showing little bits instead of dumping it all like a dump truck all at once.
I remember the first piece of feedback I got was actually from you, Artie, and I wanted to do a big visual network where you could zoom out and almost like pan around, but I found it was very hard to put that on the phone, and so I wanted to simplify that to just down to like 3 icons that you could click to and get to the next place instead of just kind of barfing it onto the screen.
Great. You know, I want to switch gears and talk about Sydney's. Sydney did a diabetes app that she had mentioned earlier. And I think she also did a good job of kind of helping folks just focus on the things that matter. So, you know, Aaron had a strong focus on that. Liam had to be forced to kind of constrain, hey, there's this huge complex network, kind of getting it down to this really matters was the challenge. And I think Sydney's, you know, managing diabetes is this very complex web of issues. But trying to focus down on what really matters so the users can make informed decisions is something she really focused on. Sid, you want to take that over?
Yeah. So I've lived with type 1 diabetes for 19 years, and I feel like it's been a great advancement in technology, but with this technology, it's not always the most user-friendly. So I really focused on that aspect of my app. I just wanted to make sure everything that was essential in management was very easily accessible and very easy to read and see what you were looking at. So here you can log your carbs and exercise. You can see that your blood sugar in real time through a continuous glucose monitor that would be linked to this app. And then you can also see the weekly averages, which is very important for calling the doctor and seeing like what the numbers need to be adjusted to. And you can see the weekly and daily averages right there. So one thing that I found was that the data visualization is very difficult to make sure that the user would be able to understand the graph, but yet it still looks compelling that you want to use the app. So I figure out by doing these 3 screens where you see daily, weekly, and then you can also see every blood sugar that was taken in that day. The user really understands what their blood sugar numbers are and what they need to call their doctor to tell them. So I really just focused on that. And then I also wanted to make sure this app holds everything that they need. So it would hold the doctor's number and all of their information with their insulin corrections and rates. So you don't have to be going to multiple different apps like what you are now, because it's usually 2 or 3 apps that right now we're using to get all this information.
You know, I remember the insight that you had around graphing by days being really compelling. Like this is not an issue that I have. And so for me, I never really experienced it. But when you were talking, I remember in class about you know, the days really matter because on some days you have classes at certain times, or fast forward to when you're working in industry, you know, have different schedules that are kind of haphazard, and just simply having weekly averages wasn't really useful, but instead having daily averages was kind of a turning point for you in the design. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so right now, personally, when I call my doctor, I need to adjust my insulin rates that I'm getting every hour. And like when I go to classes on like Tuesday, Thursday, like walking will really make my blood sugar drop. So when we're walking across campus, we might need a different amount of insulin compared to Monday, Wednesday. So to see all that information just align like this, where you're not having to go and figure out yourself or look at like a weekly chart and trying to figure out which day is which, was just very useful for someone with diabetes, just be able to easily see it.
That's great. Awesome. And then Jack, you want to help us finish everything up with talking about kind of mental health issues?
Yeah, of course. So my app was focused on ADHD, and it was tailored towards specifically adult ADHD. So basically the stigma around ADHD is that everybody has it, and that in today's world, nobody has an attention span. We're all glued to our phones. So this faulty notion actually makes it more difficult for people who do suffer with ADHD to speak out about it. And a lot of times the mental battle is overlooked. So the app I created, it is a telehealth app, but at the same time, it focuses on sharing your issues with your doctor. So it's not just going to the doctor to get medicine and then going back to your own life. It encourages discussion, and it encourages more therapy infused with like doctors. So when you first, you want to go back? Pardon? Yeah, so when you first sign up for the app, you have an evaluation. So it'll ask you a bunch of different questions. You can choose how difficult it is for you. But I made sure that for every question you can leave a note, because sometimes it's easier to express your emotion with words. So this kind of goes into writing out your feelings and writing out how things really affect you more specifically, so you can be more connected to your doctors. So then after that, it's going to give you a bunch of doctor recommendations. This is based on jobs and interests and locations, so you can really feel like the personal connection with the people that you're speaking to. So this is the home hub. This gives you your goals for the week. It helps you track your medication and your next appointments. You can have everything organized. Although these seem like simple tasks, people with ADHD can struggle keeping up with these tasks, and it can hit them really hard and be like, oh, I have to do this. So this is just daily reminders. So Quick Chat is a feature that, like, let's say something's wrong or you really need to talk to someone, you can speak to any doctor available. There'll always be doctors available, and you can ask them, you can come to them with questions and concerns, and it really helps you talk through like how you're feeling and specific situations that might have you. So this is the shared journal. This is where you get your goals for the week. It's, again, I used the wrong image actually, but yeah, so you can type notes to your doctor. They'll give you a few things to focus on. They'll give notes to you, so when you're in chats, they'll write things down so it's easier to remember, just in case patients are very forgetful.
And what was some of the feedback that you got on that, Jack?
That's a good question.
I asked it. I'm really good at that.
Yeah, some of the feedback I got is that it kind of really did help bring things together, because a lot of people that I spoke to, they felt that they're just going to the doctor strictly for medication, and that like doctors can be hit or miss. So like sometimes they care about you and like how your ADHD is affecting you, but sometimes they just care about your dosage and they'll throw you out of the building as soon as they can because they just want to get on to the next patient. So really having this opportunity to speak with people and open up about how you're feeling is really helpful for the battle with ADHD.
Yeah, that came up in a handful of the issues that our students looked into, was this idea of trying to move the conversation, like kind of move some of that interaction with the doctor earlier in the process. So when they came in, they can have a more meaningful conversation. So you kind of saw that in a couple of these, but like being able to come in and say like, this is where I'm at, rather than burning some of that valuable time on just simply updating and feedback and looping back on previous things, being able to come in and say, this is what's happening, was one of the things that came up a lot. So we're pretty close to end of time. And as you can probably see from the screen share, I'm down to 12% battery. Holy crap. This app definitely uses up my battery in a terrifying way. So Carl, were there any questions that were?
No, I didn't see any questions. I thought that was interesting to see how everyone sort of, took a look at how do you think a little bit differently about essentially a consumer health app, right? And yes, this Hop-In really does destroy the battery. So even if you're not actively presenting yourself. So are there any questions in the audience before we
I didn't get to share mine. I can still share.
Oh no!
There's
Holy
time.
crap! I'm so sorry.
Pull that up.
Yeah.
It's okay.
My word.
We're all trying to navigate this great world. It's totally fine. I can just start talking.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Jules. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. Can you? I believe I'm sharing now, so I think you can probably start.
Yep, you're good. So as we all know, there's hundreds of calorie tracking apps all over the App Store. I've even downloaded one. We've probably all had some experience with it. But this isn't just a regular calorie tracking app. It's an app that differentiates between quote unquote good and bad calories. So this could be something good like nuts, eggs, whatsoever, bad being fast food, pizza. And it offers you more healthy alternatives to not only feel good about what you're putting into your body, but to help those who are trying to gain or maintain a certain weight, track what they're eating, etc. I kind of talked about how this plays into routine making with people that have some body-related issues or eating disorders. Your data is displayed in a graph-like formation, so you can look back and see whether you met your goal, what kinds of calories you ate, and how you're looking week to week. I also added a social aspect as well. You can add friends so that people could also share what they were eating that night or if they had met their goal for the week. And I feel as if this is a great way for people to receive some positive affirmations so that others could interact with one another and encourage one another to meet their goals. I said feedback wise, I felt like maybe I could have added a mental or emotional aspect of some sort so people could track the data of how they were feeling in correlation to what they ate that day. And I think it could give us some more data. So that's my app. It's called Nutrate. I don't know if I mentioned that. So.
These are all just
Thank you, Jules.
projects,
I'm so
right? They're
sorry.
not apps that are actively being downloadable and used.
Correct. Sydney and Jake collaborated on their on an app out of this, but that's outside of scope for this class.
I have to say, I mean, kudos to all the students. I thought those are, I mean, fantastic design work there, and better than any stick figure I drew. So, I see